This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On Air.
Kia ora katoa and welcome to the OI podcast, the podcast in the Otago branch of Te Aparangi, the Royal Society, where we engage in conversations with fascinating people from the worlds of art, science and Mātauranga Māori, brought to you by your favourite radio station, Otago Access Radio, or FM, found at 105.4 FM. Or if you really want to listen to us again, because, we're really worth it, then try your favourite podcast provider such as Apple or Spotify. And each time I say that, I think we should hit them up for some sponsorship, but one day I might get around to it. So anyway, I'm Trudy, and Dr Barb has ditched us yet again for a very important meeting for the Museum Trust Board. So go, Dr Barb. But today we have with us a fascinating ecologist, Dr Ann Schlessmann, who's got a great interest and expertise and enthusiasm for linking research with conservation management. Her particular areas of interest are in braided river ecosystems, forest ecology, and enjoys working with a wide range of stakeholders. As well as that, she does a lot of climbing and enjoys baked goods and pastries. So we should do a cooking segment one day, I think. But welcome, Anne, and welcome to the show.
Kia ora, Judy. Thanks for having me.
It'll be great to have this conversation because it's a topic about internal migratory birds and conservation, which is a bit different to birds who don't migrate, and we can talk about that why. But how did you develop your interest in New Zealand, braided rivers, and then the birds here in New Zealand in particular?
I guess, going right back to interest in New Zealand, it all started that. So I grew up in Germany and finished school and wanted to do an OE and ended up, my cousin had done a year exchange in Nelson. And
right.
So, and it sounded, she had a fantastic time. She had a ball. And so it sounded like a great place to visit. And so off I went and tripped around New Zealand. And I always enjoyed being outside, but to be quite frank, I left school and wasn't entirely sure which direction I wanted to go. So I swayed, from doing engineering to... I did a bit of Chinese at school, going into Asian studies. Right. I really enjoyed architecture. So, broadly kind of anything and everything was a bit in scope.
Right.
But it then was really working on sort of vineyards and orchards in Central Otago that partially I realised I really enjoy being outside. And at the same time also developed much more of an interest in it'd be great to actually find something that I could do where it could link in with helping the environment, basically. And so after returning to Germany, I looked at different degrees. And because I actually didn't really like biology at school because it was mostly genetics, which I later ended up doing in my PhD, I chose a degree in the northern part of Germany, which had the least biology in it. And so I started off...
Apologies to a biologist out there.
And started off doing landscape ecology. Okay. And it was really great because they got us from the first year basically straight away outside. So I guess in Germany, it's sort of a proper summer semester. We ended up monitoring birds, bats. We looked at spiders. We looked at all sorts of different plants and surveys, frogs and other amphibians. So it was really...
Crikey, that's the ecosystem.
Yeah, there was butterflies and grasshopper catching. So it was really, really cool. And initially there I had a lot of friends that were... they already had an amazing bird knowledge and I had very crappy binoculars. So mostly I saw kind of grey splodges. So at the start I actually was much more on a career path to being a plant ecologist, and I ended up deciding to return to New Zealand. It got under my skin, and so I actually finished my degree at the University of Auckland, and kind of the way things sort of transferred best was into a degree of biology, so I did end up majoring.
You came back to the biology.
Yeah, I came back to biology after sort of my first midlife crisis at about 21. And it was great. I had really great lecturers, And but yeah, basically initially got really, really interested in forest ecology and I guess how, for example, epiphytes can coexist on tree ferns.
Right.
And that really, I was much more down a pathway of plant ecology. But also, living in Auckland, I realized that I am quite far away from my family. So I decided after that to I'll actually go back to Germany and work for a little bit and just find out what the real world is like, working in ecology. And landed with an NGO similar to sort of Forest and Bird in Bavaria. But yeah, their focus was primarily on birds. And so that's where the bird part started again. And I think, again, kind of really great people around me that made it lots of fun. So I got to work with eagle owls. So it's one of the biggest owls in the world, sort of 1.8 meter wingspan. Whoa. And peregrine falcons. So they nest on, both those species actually nest on rock faces and little ledges. And
is that where the rock climbing comes in?
It was certainly an overlap. And yeah, so it was really cool to be able to go out and do monitoring on those species and learn more about those species, but also have very nice colleagues that were just always willing to take me out. So if they were doing surveys, I could tag along and and finally also, I guess actually the other big part of it was that NGO had a contract with Swarovski, so we had amazing binoculars and scopes. So that transformed looking in birds quite a lot.
So they were no longer grey splodges. They were actually things you could relate to.
Yeah, and it was incredible because you could be a kilometre away and looking across a gorge, but see into an eagle owl's nest and its little nestlings.
They're amazing binoculars. Camera or tripod thing.
So a tripod, so a scope. Yes. So by that point.
That would be cool though.
Yeah, so by that point you definitely, you will shake too much. You wouldn't.
Yes,
you would see a little bit with binoculars, but you definitely want a scope. And so that was the start in getting me back into birds. And the other part that actually came in Germany was sort of working at the NGO. And I guess that's where that whole linking actually conservation management with research really sort of kind of set seed, was that we were quite often doing management, but we weren't that sure whether we were actually addressing the right problem. For example, we were creating habitat for dragonflies and trying to re-naturalize river flows, but we weren't entirely sure whether that was actually even the problem for those dragonfly populations. Or at the other end, we would be doing monitoring for eagle owls and had found out that actually a lot of the problems for eagle owls were that chicks were starving because eagle owls had trouble finding food for them. So it was a combination of diet analysis, so looking at the pellets. Eagle owls or all owls regurgitate bones out, so you can look at actually what they've been eating by kind of going through their little pellets and looking at those bones. And then also using the first round of GPS trackers and looking at how they're moving around the landscape and what part of the landscape they're using. And around that part of Europe, a lot of the hedgerows had been cleared to make bigger areas of
paddocks or farmland.
Arable fields mostly. And then the crops had changed a lot. And so instead of that, you had low crops where eagle owls could hunt for small rodents. And also have a perch to sit on to wait to look for rodent. Instead, you had nothing for them to sit on, but also quite often corn that would grow up really fast over about head height.
So there were two factors there. They couldn't perch, and then they couldn't see if there was something there anyway. So, fascinating.
Yeah, but the way to change it there quite often was like, well, it actually is at the EU level. It's in Brussels of driving sort of agricultural reform. And that drew me back to New Zealand because it seemed like here, it was easier to sort of actually link management with research, but also there was a degree at the Otago University, the wildlife management degree, where that actually explicitly was one of the goals.
Right,
was, that kind of research, not just for research sake, but actually to really make a difference.
Have an outcome from your research rather than there's always an outcome for research, like a broadened scientific knowledge, but some people like a more tangible outcome or something.
Yeah. For me, it was really about, I guess, difference made in terms of be it a population or a species, and particularly, I guess, those species that are threatened. That from whatever we would find out, that we could, as humans, be better in kind of incorporating them in how we manage ecosystems and landscapes.
So the eagle owls, before we leave them, perch somewhere safe, I hope, in Germany. Is their population recovered, or did people manage to put some reforms or protections in place for them?
They're not. I'm not entirely sure. It's probably the full answer. Right. There definitely seems to be different things going on in different areas. So I guess that's the upshot.
There's no coordinated approach.
I think the EU side of things, that'll be a really tricky part to tackle.
Yeah, I suppose that's the advantage of New Zealand, a single nation in one part. Surrounded by oceans, so you don't have to negotiate with your neighbours.
But one of the cool things is that at least a lot of the other factors could be slowly over time tackled. So, for example, for a long, long time, there were a lot of deaths due to eagle owls and other birds perching on electricity masts, power poles. And they were big enough to bridge across, they would basically fry themselves. But you could actually install features so that birds couldn't do that, and that actually has progressed. So there were at least other little levers.
Right. Yeah.
So overall, they're not entirely going down the Googler. So that is really great, and they're least prosecuted as well. So
right. Oh, good. Yeah. So wildlife management in Otago. I'm so pleased to come to Otago, and I'm probably sure nothing wrong with Auckland, but we are quite parochial down here. Yeah. And so you did your wildlife. Was it a postdoc or a post?
It was a postgraduate diploma in wildlife management, and I was really lucky. I would say, it was really, it was really cool that part of it was a paper where you were placed, or you had to find an organization in a summer project. And so I ended up working with Joe Monks. And initially looking at mice in the Alpine zone. But it really was the start of actually getting contacts within the Department of Conservation, and meeting different scientists. And I guess quite often that is, I guess almost knowing people helps a lot, because it just opens doors.
Yeah, those connections.
So even though, that project, my initial project, it somewhat hinged on, we knew that mice live in the Alpine zone and that their populations increase quite a lot when snow tussocks flower profusely, and they don't do so every year. It's just every sort of 3 to 4 years they have a big year, and then most other years they just only produce a handful of flowers. And in those flowers there's a lot of nutrients, so and obviously mice can reproduce very quickly. And we also have a lot of very cool lizards and so skinks and geckos up in the Alpine zone, but also amazing weta and other invertebrates that are likely to suffer, particularly when there's loads of hungry mice around. So kind of once the seed runs out, that was kind of what I really wanted to get at. It's like, once the seed runs out,
what do the mice eat now?
Do the mice then end up going into other native species, and how if there isn't a mast, how does that do those populations hang around in sort of shrubby vegetation, and you have a small kind of lingering mouse population hanging on and
just waiting for the next 4 years, and then they can quickly reproduce. But what did you find out?
Well, actually the project was it was a very good learning experience, but from a pure sort of academic perspective, an utter failure because
well, we learn from our failure, sure.
Yeah. So actually, the tussocks never flowered. So I spent kind of an entire spring and summer being like, come on, flower. and at some point just putting out my live traps for the mice and being like, all right, I at least figure out how many mice there are, regardless. Yeah. And I only ever caught one mouse and never caught it again. So with that, there was just no data to analyze.
Right.
but the good thing was I hung around a lot with the team that was doing at the time monitoring of rock wren, piwawa.
Oh, okay.
So really cool alpine birds have got quite long legs and hop around and are basically a little fluff ball. So they can fly. They don't fly much.
Right.
And they're almost like a little springy ball. And they're quite cute. I really like them quite you go tramping.
I have to keep an eye out. I don't know if I've ever seen.
Yeah, Homo tunnel around there. If you kind of go off into the boulder fields, that's probably the most guaranteed and closest to a road place for seeing them. And so I started helping out with the team because I was mostly just hanging around anyway, waiting for tussocks.
Tussocks
to flower
and mice to arrive.
So it was really cool. So I got to sort of start doing nest monitoring and help out with banding rock wren. So at the time, the study was trying to find out basically what their nest success is and when there is and isn't predator control and how that looks for rock wren. And so that was kind of, a way back to birds and to very cool New Zealand birds that are quite funky and have their own attributes that, quite often they don't fly much or don't like to fly and are kind of quite trusting. So they come up quite close to you and just check you out, whereas most European birds keep their distance. So you do actually want to good binoculars with you can get away with some of the New Zealand species without that.
Right. That's interesting. I never thought of it like that. So do you think that's because European birds are being predated so much, or is it just...
Yeah, it is certainly evolution that they are much more aware of, I guess, mammalian predators.
Right,
and I guess humans are somewhat a mammalian predator. So.
And a lot of our native birds, like the rock wren, they're not in populated areas.
No.
Yeah, so the low density population New Zealand, like it's mostly along the coast, that kind of stuff, probably they won't be as exposed to mammalians of the two-legged variety as other birds, overseas. But
I think it is definitely, sort of in relation to kind of having, for example, with bird species that have been put into fenced eco-sanctuaries and in populations that have been outside, you even realize that within a few generations, those populations within fenced eco-sanctuaries are much more trusting and come up closer, forage more on the ground compared to places where there's mammalian predators around. They do accustom quite quickly.
Well, it's quite fascinating. It's a bit like gated communities that humans live in. Perhaps they're more trusting, I don't know. But so we have this group of endemic birds that migrate internally. So they are... Do you want to run off the species that they are? Or?
Yeah, so there's... it's really cool. And I guess actually that set me on a pathway on studying one of those. But those species that... that migrate within New Zealand are black-fronted terns, Tarapiroa, then Toria, South Highland pied oystercatcher, Pohowera, banded dotterel, and then Tarapunga, black-billed gulls, and Rybel, Nutuparore. And all of those species breed inland and then move to the coast for the winter period.
So when you say inland, am I thinking central Otago or just a wee bit inland, or?
Depends on the species,
Right.
actually. So, some species, for some species it can be a wee bit inland. Other species it can be, right through sort of the South Island. For some of the species it also includes the North Island. And I actually should mention that I'm somewhat lying in terms of porwera. They're really fascinating because one part of the population does migrate to Australia, and those are the Central Otago Mackenzie Basin birds. So they
go to Australia for the winter.
Yes, yeah. So they're one of the few east-west migrations,
Right?
But everything that's south from the Mackenzie Basin actually migrates to the Southland coast, and everything north goes more to the northern harbours.
Well, why is that? Is it food or?
It's a very good research question that you've got there.
Anybody got any funding?
Yeah, there's at the moment some work trying to find that out of what, why do those birds go, and is that something genetically that makes them go? But it's basically still an open question, and there's a small part of the population that actually does stay coastal as well. They're quite funky in their own way, but because they show a little bit everything. But they're really, really cool. And those, I think their species, they're quite unique within New Zealand because, yes, they are migratory, so they're not year round, and they really connect people across the motu. So you can have the same bird breeding in the Rangitata River that hangs out in winter in Auckland Harbour. And so going from quite a remote place with a population of about 20 to
downtown Auckland.
Yeah, downtown Auckland. And
they're not fazed by it, is it?
No. And so it's really cool to actually see those connections also between different places. And the other cool part is that we have international migrants that hang out here when it's winter in the Northern Hemisphere. So right now you would be able, if you were to go particularly in places like the Firth of Thames, Miranda, sort of, kind of just south of Auckland, there'd be bar-tailed godwoods and red knots, and but it's almost like a shift change. So when these birds go back to breed in around sort of March, April, you have the internal migrants, our own ones, come to hang out in the winter in those same estuaries and forage. And when they go back to breed, the international ones go back. So it's this real shift change of bird populations.
I wonder if they kind of how do they work it out? Or just, that's quite fascinating, because imagine if they were there at the same time, it wouldn't work, would it? Because there wouldn't be enough food.
Yeah,
I
guess it's a long, long time where that has evolved, where that has, where they've been able to sort of figure out of like, there's food resources here. But I think it's a really, really good question. I mean, the main hypothesis around why migration exists is around that sort of food resources aspect of that conditions aren't good enough on the breeding ground. So individuals need to go somewhere where there are food resources available to them. But it is still fascinating that obviously, those birds that breed inland, and for example, particularly those birds that breed inland in riverbeds, then end up in coastal estuaries.
Because the water's like different kind of water as well. And
so quite different environment. And that they sort of return back to similar places to breed then.
Now you've got me thinking it's quite, that's quite interesting, because you're leaving quite a different environment. Do they eat the same kind of things? So, like, is the food source similar, or it must be different?
Depends. Yeah, again, it depends on the species. So some species change quite a lot. So, for example, Toria, South Island pied oystercatcher that I've worked on, in the coastal areas, they eat tuangi, cockles.
Oh, yeah.
But when they come inland, quite a bit of the food is, for example, earthworms from sort of muddy areas, sort of grassy paddocks. I'm not quite sure entirely what they find in the Braided river beds themselves. They kind of poke around in the sand. You see their little bill kind of pattern.
Oh, yeah, I've seen it,
But then, black-fronted terns, for example, they feed on the mayfly larvae as they're welling up. And then on the coast, they can be up to 60 kilometers offshore, so it'll be little fish then. And they are actually quite diverse, again, in what they eat. So they do eat also lizards over grassland areas next to rivers and, little fish. But, it'll be quite a complete marine kind of diet when they're on the coast.
So diversity in diet's probably a useful trait to have.
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. No, that certainly helps.
And with these migratory birds, there must be some challenges around how, conservation management, because if you've got something that just stays in relatively one place, you can observe them quite easily and note what they do and what's interacting with them and what might be impacting their populations. But how do you overcome those challenges with birds that might be at one place one time of the year and another place at another time of the year?
That's a very good question, Trudy. It is certainly a challenge because, as you pointed out, the population is never entirely in the same place, and because we've got, depending on the species, breeding sites can be connected to overwintering sites quite closely. So, kind of, for example, with going back to the banded dotterel, that you have birds from the inland area going to Australia and then coming back to breed inland again. Or you could have very little connection between breeding sites and overwintering sites. So, for example, for South Island pied oystercatcher, there's up to 30,000 birds overwintering in the Firth of Thames.
30,000?
Yes. And they will breed anywhere in the South Island, kind of from sort of the top of the South Island to down Invercargill.
But they all go to the Firth of Thames, don't
they? So depending on where you are, you see a different part of the population. And so I guess for any conservation management, you first want to actually figure out, is there a problem? Is the population actually in decline? But that becomes challenging of how do we even monitor those bird populations that aren't always in one place. And
because you could count one bird 6 times and 6 birds not at all.
Yes, exactly. You've hit it on the head. That is exactly the sort of problem. And then the other part is so if you have figured out that the population is in decline, what drives that decline? Is it survival? And then if it is survival, is it on the wintering sites, or is it survival while they go from breeding sites to wintering sites?
Right.
Or is it on the breeding sites themselves? Is it recruitment that's poor?
What do you mean by recruitment?
So I guess chick survival. So are they producing lots of chicks, or are the chicks even making it into the population?
Surviving,
So are they
growing to adulthood?
Are the eggs hatching? Are those chicks fledging? And do those fledged chicks then become old enough to become breeding adults?
Right.
So
it's quite a complex challenge you're involved in.
So that is definitely in some ways, I think, again, the lucky thing is in New Zealand, there's still loads of different stakeholders involved, but it's not across international boundaries.
Right, yeah.
Which makes it even harder when you have to tackle different countries or different hemispheres.
True.
But, there's, the cool thing is, I guess, one part is technology. So these days, GPS tags have shrunk hugely, so you can put a tiny little GPS tracker on a bird and actually find out where it goes, which is a huge step forward because for some of those species, we don't actually understand how breeding colonies are related to wintering sites.
Right, so we need to go for some of them right back to that original point, basis to find out what's going on before we can even tackle or where they're going to and coming from.
And then the second aspect is really that there's new, better statistical, analysis frameworks that allow us to actually make use of and better incorporate I guess, also the biology of the species, so that we have monitoring data, for example, from breeding seasons that is quite often very detailed because, we want to follow nests and find out how many chicks are actually making it. But then also quite often we have large-scale count data from different monitoring data sets. So, for example, Birds New Zealand has been amazing, and since 1984 has carried out each year in winter wader counts. So they go to coastal sites where they know birds hang out, and then in June or July on a high tide, you want the high tide because then the birds are closer to you.
Right, yeah.
And then, and this is all volunteers. They go.
I was going to say, How does you get involved in that? You just contact Birds New Zealand, or
yes, yeah. So formerly the Ornithological Society of New Zealand, these days Birds New Zealand, but and there's amazing expertise within Birds New Zealand, but also an incredible amount of just volunteer kind of, I guess, energy in collecting those data nationally at a national scale. So it's one of our best data sets to actually look at trends of those species. And or on the flip side, for example, we have got also some data on birds that breed in braided riverbeds.
Right.
And those are collected or have been collected originally from the Department of Conservation, or I guess back then it was the Wildlife Service. Then
that's going back for a while.
Yeah, similarly. So it's a combination there of volunteers often, plus the Department of Conservation, and then quite often also the regional council is now doing counts.
Right.
So, which particularly with Braided Rivers, I guess, because it is hardly any of those are national parks. So it's many people that are somewhat involved, but nobody has kind of the
overall control, oversight of the whole.
Yeah.
And Braided Rivers, as we segue into those briefly, they're quite unique in some ways to New Zealand.
Yes, yeah, they're incredible places. So that's so after my failed mouse project, I then was on the lookout because I knew I wanted to do a master's, but given that I had realised how hard it is to rely on some natural phenomenon like tussock masting.
What did they say? You should never work with children or animals. I think that might apply to science as well.
Yes,
or just be flexible. Yeah,
flexible. But no, definitely. It definitely was always valuable, but you don't quite appreciate always the challenges until you experience them. So I ended up then. The Department of Conservation at the time were wanting a student to look more closely at black-fronted terns, so that breed in braided rivers and use genetic techniques. So going back to another thing that I decided that I actually thought I would never be able to do, go back into those and understand how breeding colonies are related to each other, so that we could better understand the connectivity of those places where they do breed. So even just in one season. Initially, I had, again, grand plans that I could also get to the wintering sites by genetically matching birds, so catching birds in breeding grounds and then catching birds on wintering sites and genetically assigning them, but very quickly actually found out that
didn't work.
That didn't work, no.
But at least you know that now. Yeah, we can say, no, that doesn't work for this experiment. Yeah.
But going back to Braided Rivers, so that was my introduction to Braided Rivers, was then spending about 3 months living out of a car and trying to catch black-fronted terns to take a tiny, tiny blood sample, so then I could do genetic analyses on them. And it allowed me to really, I guess, get an appreciation of how many braided rivers there are, particularly in the South Island, and how different the systems are, but at the same time also how certain reaches face similar challenges.
Right.
And it was very, it was very, very cool, because until then, I guess I had always driven along State Highway 1 between Otapoti and Otatai and looked over the Rangitata and Rakaia Bridge, and they just looked like incredible deserts, and couldn't really understand.
Why is this bridge so long?
Exactly.
This much river, but there's a reason for that, isn't there?
Yeah, so exactly. It was exactly that thought. And so it was incredible to actually be in these riverbeds in October and see them come alive. And and species that look, because they're adapted to avian predators that are almost invisible. So they're quite often almost the same color as the rocks.
Right.
So you hardly can see the birds until you're actually in the river. The exception might be actually black-billed gulls because they form quite high dense.
They're bunched together.
Yeah,
mobs of them.
They're big colonies. So those you can actually, they're quite amazing when they're all lift up into the air at once.
Do they do that naturally, or do they do that if they're scared, like take off all at once? Or
it is, for example, if a harrier would fly over, they perceive that as threat, and then all of them come up to actually mob on the harrier and drive the harrier away. So it's safety in numbers for them. And black-footed terns are the same to a degree, so they're also in colonies. Sadly, never quite as larger colonies as black-billed gulls.
Right.
And I guess part of that is because their population size is simply smaller. So if there were more of them, I'm sure there would be bigger colonies. But those species, they're really, really incredible. That Ryebill, for example, is the only species in the world that have a bill always curved to the right. So to be able to go under those rocks. and pick out those insects.
But that means they always have to be looking right if they had like a spoon. Is it the spoonbill which goes both ways?
Yeah, the spoonbills. I really don't know how they don't get dizzy looking at them in the harbour when they're looking for food. But no, ryebills, they just kind of just gently go look under rocks for for little different insects that they can hoover up. So braided rivers, there's a few factors that come in and why New Zealand actually has such a high number or disproportionate number of them given the size of New Zealand. And that is that you need big mountains. And so you otherwise have that in the Rocky Mountains in Northern America, Patagonia, for example, Himalayas, a little bit around Europe, sort of the Alps there. And then, of course, in New Zealand, particularly around the Southern Alps. So you've got a lot of bedrock material that provides, there's a lot of erosion happening, and so you've got that sediment supply. Then the other part is that you need plains for a river to move around.
Right.
So, again, that quite often happened if there was prior to that at some point a big glaciation, and so you've got the rest of the landscape flattened out.
So they can do that braiding, spread out. Yeah.
But then the other part is also, of course, you need the flooding, the water volume to move around all of that sediment. And again, New Zealand is excellent because you've got a lot of westerly weather systems bringing rain. And so you've got these amazing, got the Southern Alps with lots of bedrock material. And then you've got these incredible floods. So I think, for example, in 2019, the South Island was cut in half.
Ashburton.
Because it kind of rained for a significant amount of time, and all of those rivers were in flood. And for example, the south arm of the Rangitata that hadn't had water flowing in it for quite some time, all of a sudden ended up back as a river. And
that's why we have those really long bridges, because that will happen.
And it's really important having these geomorphological processes in action that you have, because what makes a braided river is really this dynamic turnover of gravel bars and that renewal. So you have always kind of parts where there's an old floodplain where there's already some vegetation starting to grow. So quite often it'll be matagari trees or kowhai tree. And then, you've got the active riverbed where there's currently sort of water flowing and gravel bars, and quite often that's barren, or it's only really short, or naturally it'd be really, really short kind of ranunculus or tiny little
shrubby things.
Tiny little plants. And then you've got kind of backbends that, for example, form wetlands as well.
They're quite dynamic and quite diverse. Spaces.
So I guess the dynamic on sort of different timescales. So it can be quite quickly if there's a flood. Actually, all of a sudden an entire arm can reappear within hours. But it is on a sort of more decade time frame, you have also quite a lot of dynamic sort of turnover of kind of really
Material.
old, kind of newly areas that get eroded, and then older areas that get sort of that a little bit of vegetation back on, and then you've got kind of older floodplains that have almost more mature trees on it back again. But the fascinating thing is because you've got on a very sort of small geographic space a lot of habitat diversity, and because of that, for example, you've got about 80 different bird species in braided rivers.
80?
Yes, so it's because you've got everything from wetlands where we've got,
of course,
bitterns and herons, sort of hanging out, and then as you go kind of more towards the centre of the river, you've got birds that feed by wading, so they want really, the ones with short legs and short bills want really shallow water to kind of poke around. The ones with longer legs and longer bills, like khaki, black stilt, are able to kind of hang around in slightly deeper water. And then you've got sort of the aerial hunters, sort of the black-fronted tern and gulls are those that are amazing to watch, to see them kind of dip into the water and hunt the mayfly larvae and come back out. And then you've got, of course, all of your waterfowl, your ducks and so on. You've got
so it's
different
kind of
shags.
Like a whole world, that's all interconnected but quite separate from what we might see as you said, as we're driving up and down that coast, that road.
And probably if you would have somebody sitting here that would know loads about freshwater fish, they could tell you all about like how different fish species are in different parts of the river, that although it's all one river, that of course they also like different bits of, be it really fast flowing water or
dark
or for example quite often there's in the sort of spring fed wetlands that are really just adjacent to braided rivers, you've got quite different fish to sort of the main part of the river, and obviously whitebait, the galaxids and so on. So it's an amazing place, and from the bird perspective, it really just comes alive in sort of October, November, where all of a sudden you've got these thousands and thousands of birds returning from the coast. And the first ones to come back are Torea, the South Island pied oyster catcher, and they're really the herald of spring. It's kind of once they're back in August, you kind of know that it's turning, the light is coming back. And it's been really nice, kind of some of the work that I've been doing in the rangitata with the farmers. They know that. They know kind of like, oh yes, the Torea coming back. It's gonna.
So I wonder if that's interesting. Whether that triggers. Oh, that might be. I'll have to do this now. It's kind of like a natural calendar of when things should happen because that's going on.
Yeah. There's definitely whakatauki around cuckoos, around the shining cuckoo and the timing of your planting of kumara.
Right, yes.
But they are obviously our international migrants, so they go somewhere sort of towards more the Pacific, and long-tailed cuckoo the same. They kind of go more into the Pacific, and then they do breed in New Zealand, but they go offshore for much warmer climates over the winter than we can offer.
And some of the challenges for these birds that nest in the braided rivers must be us, because often those braided rivers are our play areas. That's where you might go fishing, take your dog, take your four-wheel bike thing. And if some of these are just little nests that are really hard to tell. So, distinguish between whether it's a rock or a bird's nest. Yeah, quite often. Do you think that unintentionally we don't realise we're disturbing their habitat?
Yeah, that's definitely an aspect of it. I mean, it's one of many that really threatens them on breeding grounds. But, it really... So, their eggs, all of them really look like rocks. It's kind of quite a skill, actually, to find a nest. And even, with some, for example, Ribel, it's amazing. They've got the exact same grey colour as the grey wacky rocks that they nest amongst. And even once you found a nest, you can go 3 steps back and you've lost it, and you have to steer again and be like, I know there's somewhere here. I've just found it. So they're incredible. But particularly, I guess it's mostly a problem I would say where people are, so in the lower rivers, because I guess you've just got a critical mass of
people.
Of people, of lots of disturbance, and I guess quite famously, unfortunately, the Ashley estuary or the Ashley River has been in the news a few times for Crate Day with lots and lots of four-wheel drives, and particularly because it's all on one day and it's the peak breeding season of those birds. It's really bad, and you will never see a nest, let alone at times a bird sitting on the ground, and their response to a threat is to pretend that they've got a broken wing and they walk around close to the nest trying to lead you away.
Oh, so that's why they do that. So how would a broken wing deter?
They try to lead you away.
Yeah.
But then when you do get close, they will fly away. But obviously with a truck or or even dogs, there's just no way that that they stand any chance. And I mean, there have been cases. Yeah, I guess it's always a bit I think that's the sad part of it. For example, Ashburton for kind of quite a long time, there's been a huge black-billed gull colony right next to the State Highway 1 bridge, and somebody has willfully driven through that and crushed birds, and they did face court over it.
Good.
Court charges. So yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So there are always, I think, those outliers of people. I think there is.
Well, there's to be honest, we're going to have those. Yeah.
Yeah. I think a lot of people are just simply unaware that they don't know that these birds exist, or even if they do know that those birds exist, I have seen a tramping that people just don't realize. The bird actually trying to dive bomb you is telling you that you're really close to its nest, and you should just walk the other direction very, very quickly. Whereas they just see this harassing bird, but have no idea what it's doing. So most birds. It depends a little bit on the individual as well, but black-fronted terns and South Island oyster catchers and so on, they will actually fly at you and dive bomb you if you're really close to the nest and basically tell you to get away. But if you don't know that is what it's trying to tell you, then you're probably disturbing them. And some species are a bit more disturbance prone than others. So black-fronted terns, they nest in colonies, and particularly at night they can be spooked quite easily.
Oh, okay.
So then even a rabbit going through the colony can spook all of the nesting birds, even though there's no real threat. They just decide to go up and leave and not return to their eggs. So,
okay. So it's abandonment.
Yeah, abandonment. So it's, and because it's a colony, it's quite significant that all of a sudden you've got 30 nests that are abandoned.
That would certainly have an impact.
Yeah. But actually, going back to the human disturbance, I think what is a really, really cool example of how people can work together is the Ashley River Care Group, Rakahuri River Care Group. They work together with the four-wheel drive club in around Rangiora and approached them, and we're like, hey, you might not know there's these birds nesting. Could we temporarily, with the support of your club, block off some of the access ways? And it's just temporarily. And I think it was really, really good to actually acknowledge, okay, there's different needs and people appreciate rivers for different reasons. Yeah. And yes, they're a place to play and they're a place to fish and so on. But there's also kind of ways of doing it that impact can be minimal on native bird life.
Together. Yeah.
And I think quite often that is a better way than trying to top down, to actually sort of try to make people understand and kind of see both sides and have people come along. And that's worked really, really well. So often many rivers these days have at least signs, but often I think signs might not be enough. But I guess if there is, for example, a four-wheel drive club, then that is a very good pathway of approaching it and getting people on board.
Because as you said, quite often it's just people just aren't aware. It's not that they don't want to. It's just if you don't know, then you don't know to be careful. And that bird behaviour just think about what they're doing. If they're dive bombing you, you're obviously close to something that you need to be careful about. And coming back, and said that, was it one of them, the rocks, their eggs are the same colour as the grey wacky rock. Now, that must have happened before people were around. So was that to deter another type of predator?
Yeah, so in New Zealand, I mean, it's really cool. There weren't any land-living mammals apart from bats.
Right, yeah.
And so all of the predators were avian predators, and they hunt by sight. So if you're really well camouflaged,
you're hard to be found.
Yeah, so that's very good protection. But unfortunately, now with a whole swathe of introduced predator species, and particularly in braided rivers, that does mean kind of cats, possums, ferrets, stoats, weasels, hedgehogs, and rats. That you do end up with a much. Well, yeah, your defense isn't actually as good because loads of the species hunt by sight and as well as smell.
Yeah,
and then they are nocturnal. So if I say by sight, it is a lot of it is smell. And then, I mean, some of it, or again, it'd be interesting for you to get a view from a hedgehog specialist. But to me, it seems like they just do a random walk. They sort of seem to just bumble around, and if they come across a nest, they just hoover it up.
And then just wander off and see what they can find next. So there's no right.
Yeah, so people have kind of tracked them with putting a little spool on their spines and then following them around and kind of seeing where all the thread went. And it did seem that they're kind of just walking around in random circles. So they don't necessarily as such hunt birds' eggs out, but they do eat them.
Eat them when they trip across them.
But basically any defense of having a camouflaged egg doesn't help you if you smell really good.
Yeah, no, that's true.
And quite strongly, so yeah.
Well, this has been quite fascinating, I have to say. There's a lot more to those braided rivers and our birds and migration and the conservation challenges around that. We need to kind of wrap it up there. And we haven't even really got into the wonderful papers that you brought to talk about. So any last words before we wind up?
Oh, thanks for having me along, Trudy. That's been really great. I'm glad that I could convince you that there's really cool things to be found in braided rivers, and hopefully at some point other people might find them as well.
Yes, so when you're out there this summer, have a look around and see just what's out there. But thank you very much, everybody. So that is us for this Friday, and Dr. Barb should be back next week. Okay, cheers.
You've been listening to the OI Podcast, the shout-out for the arts, sciences and Mataranga Māori.
You can support this podcast by becoming a member of the OI. Check out the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences on Facebook or our website.
If you'd like to listen again to this episode or others from the series, look for the OI Podcast on OAR FM's website, oar.org.nz.
Brought to you by the Otago Institute for Arts and Sciences, the Otago branch of the Royal Society of New Zealand.
This podcast was produced by OAR FM Dunedin with support from New Zealand On the Air.